Okay, so I wanted to walk you through some of the features of how to move elements around in the back end and create pages. So let's jump over to the dashboard here, and this is the basic dashboard. And let's go into Pages, and let's hit Add New. So this would be useful in creating like a flow page or a funnel page or a splash page, any kind of page in the website that will maintain proper header, footer, navigational elements, and URL structure. So for our example here, let's do a page title as Rsvp Testing Center. So you give it a title, and then the next thing you're going to hit is the Visual Composer, which is basically the back-end editor. And websites are set up into rows and columns. So what we want to do first is create an element. So for this element, we're going to add a row, which is where we're going to place content into. And as default, this is a full width row. So it'll show the full width section. We can do a half and half section, or we could do a 3/4, 1/4 section, etc. So you can customize how your rows and columns are set up. So before we go any further, what I want to do is hit Publish and show you what the base page setup looks like. So once we hit Publish and all is finished, I'm going to go ahead and view the page in a new tab. And this is basically what it's going to create. So it's going to create a default title area here, and it has all the elements of the top navigation with all of the main menu system in here, all the footer data, all this kind of stuff in here. So let's go ahead and add some content. So the first option you have is adding a text block. So that's the most basic thing. So what you do to put elements in here is you would hit a plus button. Then it gives you a whole set of options on what you can do. The most common ones you're going to use is single image, text block, and if you want to place a form on the page, you would use the contact form 7 call. Then you get into empty space, which is how you're going to space out your layouts, and you have separators. So those are your primary areas. So the first thing we'll use is a text block, and it adds some filler text in here. We can go ahead and leave the filler text in there, but let's give it a heading. So type in your heading and then you highlight it, and then when you change this paragraph area, try to move, sometimes you have to move your windows around. Hit that. Let's give that a heading 1, and we'll go ahead and just copy this text a few more times to fill it up a little bit, and hit save, and this is what it gives you here. Now, if you meant to put this content over here, you can simply just drag the content into that row or back over here, etc. So let's go ahead and clone this by hitting the duplicate clone button, and let's drag a piece of that text here, and then let's create another row to go underneath here by simply cloning this row, which would give us 2 rows, and hit update, and let's see what that looks like. This is the basic readout, which is nice, but I have some nice padding up here, but there's really no space in between this text and this text here. So what you're going to want to do is start using separators. So you can do this 2 ways. You can hit the plus button and hit add empty space, and give it a spacing of say 60 pixels, and hit save, and it's going to place it down here by default. You just drag it up to in between those 2 areas and hit update, and then I always watch this up here. Once this is done refreshing, I can go ahead and refresh on this side, and now you see we have a 60 pixel space here, but it looks a little too tight to the footer here. So you can achieve this by doing 2 things. You could duplicate this and put this down here, or you can add padding or margin to your last row. So you would hit the edit pencil button for the row settings, hit your design options, and here is your spacing center for this row. Down here you could simply type in 60 and hit save, and that avoids adding an extra element down there. So if we update that and then refresh, you'll see that I have a 60 pixel space here and a 60 pixel space here, so it looks pretty nice. Now, if you don't want this heading up here, which sometimes can take up a little too much real estate, the page options, if we look here at the top of the page, if I scroll down, the page options are pretty broad. So if we get into, you can change your header skins and all this kind of stuff, but what we're looking at here is the title. And this framework is based on Quotey framework, so this is Quotey title. You would change this to don't show title area, yes. And that'll basically make that title disappear. So if we hit update and then refresh, it'll take away this center up here, and now we have a nice tidy page. So let's go into how to add a contact form. So say I wanted to put a contact form in here. I'm going to hit the plus button. I'm going to hit contact form 7. I will have already pre-built my contact form in the contact section like we touched on the marketing page. And let's put a basic contact form in here, and you can change the names of these in the contact form section. Hit save. And for demonstration purposes, I'm going to duplicate our empty space section, and I'm going to put this below the contact form and update so we have a nice spacing. And now we have a contact form live on the page with the proper 60 pixel spacing in between here, which is really cool. And you don't need to do anything else besides add in your forms. All the validation centers are all set up. Everything is good to go on it. So now what if we want to put a picture in? What if we want to put a picture on this side or maybe below some of this text? I can prepend to the column and I can add a single image, and it's going to give us some basic data. I always change this to full and change your image to, let's say, this picture here. And if it has an empty caption, alt text, and description, make sure you name it what the picture is. The more you do this, the better off you're going to be on SEO. So hit set image and hit save, and it's going to put an image here. So hit update, and we should get an image to show underneath this area here, just like that. And if we want to add another image, we can just simply duplicate this one, drag it underneath that one, and now we have the same image on both sides. And we could edit that out. And we could maybe put this image here. And that'll give us another image, which is pretty cool. And of course, all of this will resize accordingly for mobile. So you'll see how everything compresses down nicely and is readable. Bring it back up. It's normal. All the menu items are here. So what about a button? Let's get rid of these. Let's get rid of that image here and this image here, and let's add a button in. Now buttons, there's a call to action button, which I don't really like. I think that one's kind of ugly. I like the custom button. I like to always give it extra large full width so it takes up the whole column size. Give it some text. The icon pack we touched on, Font Awesome. You would simply find your icon that you want to use, and let's just give it some scissors or something like that. Change your color of your icon. I'm going to make mine green, and you're going to give it a link. This is any URL you want it to point to. Link target is itself or a blank tab, so choose blank if you want to keep them on the page. And here's where you can change all your style of the actual button. So by default, if we just hit save and we refresh, remember we took out these images, this is what it'll look like. A nice clean button, and I made my icon green. But if you want to change the style and maybe make it a see-through button, you could do color is the font color, hover is the hover button color, background color right now is black, so we can go ahead and change that to white, and let's give it a border of black, and let's give the text color black, and hit save and see what that does. Since our Rsvp theme is black and white. So there, now you have a nice cool black and white button, but you'll notice it doesn't do anything on hover. So if we go back and edit the button again, change our icon color to black, change our hover color to, let's say, yellow. I'm sorry, change our hover color to white, and change our background color to black, and save. Now the color should invert. Like that. And then you could always change it back or switch things around. So you can get pretty creative with buttons. Let's go back and change this back. Hover background color is going to be black. The border color is going to be black. The hover color, this is the hover text color, is white, and the background color on non-hover is white. So this gets a little bit confusing even for me. Sometimes when you're trying to go fast, you can get things backwards, but a couple of takes and there you go. So that's pretty cool, but you'll notice there's no spacing in between here and the button, and that's because we want to add some more empty space. So you're going to prepend to this, add some empty space. Default's 32 pixels. You can just leave it at 32 and drag it where you want the spacing to be. Update and refresh. And now you have some space. So you could see how you could build out a page pretty wide pretty quickly. And again, if we add another row and we made this row, maybe it always adds data to the bottom. If we made this row maybe a bunch of columns like this, and we moved this up to the top, and we duplicate our empty space to here, and we duplicated some text here, and I make this text a little smaller, you could make a whole area of, say, services or offers or really whatever you decide. And I'm just using duplicate to kind of show you. Update. See, now we have some content here. And the more you change the heading tag here, so if you change this from a heading 1 to, let's say, heading 3, it would make that smaller, of course. So if we update it, and the typical rule of thumb for SEO when it comes to heading tags is you want the heading tags to cascade down in their natural order. So if you have a heading tag of H1, see, this would be incorrect because this would be a heading tag 3 before an H1. So you always want your H1s, your H2s, your H3s, etc. to cascade as you get down the page. That's the proper SEO protocol. So putting an H3 before an H1 is technically incorrect, but it also depends on the use case. So you're not going to get a penalty for it, but try to get into the habit of making them proper when you move around. If you wanted to maybe add the Rsvp scrolling recommended clients, that's called the, let's find it over here. There's so many things you can do with this, but let's go into find the carousel. Which is this. And we're going to call the Rsvp clients carousel. You can add a bunch of carousels. This is the one. Default number of items, let's say it's 5. And you could set orders and everything else, but for demonstration purpose, let's just add that. And let's put the carousel here, and then again, give it some empty space in between, so everything's padded nicely. And hit refresh. And now we have our scrolling client list, which is really cool. So you can see how you could get pretty creative with this, and you can upload higher resolution images for the carousel. I'll touch on that real quick. That's right here where it says Quote Carousel, and you hit Carousel Items, and here's all of our different logos that we have. So here's the Bed Bath & Beyond logo. If I hit Edit, you would just remove this image, and then it says choose an image. The minimum width needs to be 220, so you would upload another 220 image that's maybe a better resolution. And right here is where you would tell it what carousel you want it to go into. So we have it set up to Rsvp clients. If you wanted to add another carousel, you would just hit this button and you can make a new carousel, which is cool. So that's the rundown of how to change the order and add elements to pages, images, etc. So I'll stop this video here, and let me know if you have any questions.